In this episode of AI and Data Governance with Dr. Vega.
One of the things that I keep reminding my teams about is reminding them of who our customers are. Our customers are my friends, my family, the Whataburger down the street that I take my son to every Saturday. It's Malia's gym that her kids go to.
We're currently in Chicago, and I'm here visiting with my friend Josh Power, the capability owner of advanced analytics, automation, and AI at Oncor.
We have the honor of providing a critical service to our customers, and when they're really in need, we need to communicate them appropriately. And I think that this is kind of where my dream kind of falls into a line with what he's talking about, and that is giving our customers the experience that they want and they desire. There's lots of talk about Gen AI, and that's all the buzz, and people tend to equate like Gen AI is just AI, and I'm like,
Right.
Here's what AI is to Oncor. We've been predicting transformer failures for years and years. That's my dream, is to be able to do the things that we know we need to do better and quicker.
Welcome to the AI and Data Governance podcast with Dr. Vega, where we explore the cutting-edge AI and data innovations shaping the future of the electric utility industry. I am your host, Rolando Vega, and today we have an exceptionally special guest joining us. We're currently in Chicago, and I'm here visiting with my friend Josh Power, the capability owner of advanced analytics, automation, and AI at Oncor. Today, we'll be discussing not only some of Oncor's key accomplishments, but also gaining insight into how Mr. Powell is optimizing operational efficiency, improving system reliability, and enhancing customer experience through data-driven solutions. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rolando. Nice to be here.
This is an exciting moment, absolutely. So let me share some key fascinating highlights about Oncor to get the dialogue started. Oncor is the largest regulated electric transmission and distribution utility in Texas, and they're serving more than 10 million customers across 95 counties in the state, with a service area covering 140,000 square miles. That's huge. Oncor operates in cities like Dallas, Fort Worth, Midland, and Waco. The company manages a vast network of more than 140,000 miles of transmission and distribution lines, providing electricity to homes and businesses. Oncor employs approximately 4,000 dedicated professionals working around the clock to maintain and modernize the electric grid while supporting Texas' growing energy needs and renewable energy integration efforts. Now, let's talk about some of the outstanding achievements. I'll mention just a couple, and then we'll move into the meat of the conversation here today. The first one, in 2023, Oncor received a notable recognition for its efforts in restoring power during severe weather events. This recognition came from the Edison Electric Institute Emergency Response Award. And Oncor is also leading in grid modernization by partnering with companies like Anterix to deploy its own private wireless network for mission-critical data and communications, enhancing the utility's ability to monitor and manage its infrastructure in real time. And the last point I will make is about Oncor sustainability focus. In 2023, the company earned recognition ranking among the top 2% of electric utilities globally for environmental and governance performance. With that, let us dive into the life journey and achievements that Josh Power has brought into the organization with his team. And we will start with Josh, your reflections. Why did you choose Oncor to build your career? And also why analytics?
Let's start with why Oncor. So previous to me joining Oncor, I was a energy and utility focused consultant. Did that for about 14, 15 years. I like to say Oncor was my final client. I'm a former recovering consultant. Was implementing a big project at Oncor starting in 2016. And in 2019, Oncor did a reorganization, got a new CIO. Her name's Malia Hodges. She basically came to me and said, hey, would you consider becoming an employee? And at the time, I was ready to transition out of consulting and do something a little bit different. And Oncor felt like home, to be honest with you. Oncor is home to me. I am a native of North Texan, grew up in Grapevine, Texas, born in Dallas. So born and raised in the service territory. I spent a little bit of time outside of it, But Oncor is my friends, it's my family, it's home to me, and it's an industry that I really enjoy working in. And there's so much happening in the utility space that people who aren't in the utility world probably think that utilities are a little bit, slow. And of course, we're a regulated entity, and it may not be as innovative as people really think. But those of us that are in the know that it's cutting edge in a lot of respects, especially when it comes to the use of data, the application of AI, that type of thing. So fell into it kind of by accident. It just happened that Oncor was my next client on the list of potential clients for me to be a consultant at, and end up staying. Have no intention of going anywhere else.
Well, and in so many respects, it's really exciting to go into a company that embraces the new opportunities with a spirit of creativity. I have seen how you and your team, it seems like, looking from the outside, which at some point, I was working at CPS Energy, and I would be like, oh man, I wish that we could do all of the things that the guys at Oncor are doing, and in many respects, an admirable operation because of the open mind approach to solving problems. So I could see the connection there for sure. As we look at what about analytics? That drove you to it out of the many innovative areas that you could be working into.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of fell into analytics as well. I like to use the analogy of you don't really adopt a cat adopts you. I think analytics adopted me in some respect. Our CIO that I just mentioned, Malia, came to me, and I thought I was going to lead another portion of her part of the business, honestly. And she came to me and said, hey, I don't want you to do that. I want you to focus in on analytics and automation. I said, I don't know that much about that. And she's like, oh, well, you'll figure it out. So dove in head first, and that's exactly how I attack most problems is if I don't understand it, I'm going to do all of the learning that I can, and I'm going to lead the way that I know how to lead. So a lot with trust and building relationships and having a foundation of technology that I can apply in other areas, and it just took off from there. So at the time, Oncor had been doing analytics, advanced analytics, machine learning for probably 4 years prior to me joining the organization. We have a federated model. It's not a center of excellence. It's not just my team doing analytics. I'm helping other teams from an enablement perspective get things done. The organization that I run is responsible for the tools, the platform, best practices, governance, that type of thing. But a lot of the hard work is done outside of my organization, but I'm supporting those teams in their efforts. So from that perspective, it was not too much dissimilar to other IT type projects that I've been working on. I'm responsible for a platform, I'm responsible for implementation and best practice and governance and that kind of thing. It's the analytics piece, the AI pieces that I had to learn. Mm-hmm. And just took off. I just like I said, dove feet first, and let's go after it, kind of stuff.
What's your background?
I have a degree from A&M. I'm an Aggie, fighting Texas Aggie class of '97. I have a degree in business analysis, and I became a software developer outside of graduation. I loved software development, but I took the life of a lot of developers in that it was a couple of years long. I quickly became a business analyst because I have the ability to connect those technology dots to technology dots and connect with people that are developing or implementing systems and be able to kind of be that Rosetta Stone to allow people to talk back and forth. And that's really where my career kind of had the trajectory in terms of business analysis, project management, program management, that type of thing. So just kind of fell into it from that respect.
Now that you mentioned that let's say point in your journey where you were operating as a business analyst, I do see more and more that there are certain roles in an organization that sometimes I think we have either taken for granted or we have not put enough attention to. And I may say that business analysts is one of those roles.
Yeah.
Where I think that we can we can clarify or articulate a little bit better why we need business analysts in an organization. Could we maybe take a moment
Sure.
to describe that, at least from your perspective? I have my own impressions of
Right.
why that is, but if you can make the argument, because there are some that in the audience may be considering what careers to pursue and what would be a good way to approach it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think a lot of organizations look at a business analyst role as kind of like a glorified note taker who's there to kind of extract some information out of whatever from a requirements perspective or from a need perspective. But I think a good business analyst has a real foundation of what the business is trying to do and how they're trying to operate, and ideas for how to get better, for improvement, and to be able to translate that to some people who are really just nuts and bolts, heads down delivery, whether they're writing code or trying to implement a system. I think that it's a real skill, and I think when you find those really good BAs, man, you hang on to them because you can see that they can take a pretty nebulous concept and then translate that into a tangible, workable product at the end that not only works from a technology standpoint, but also from a functionality standpoint, and there's magic that happens there. And those people, if you can grab those kind of concepts, there's lots of opportunities for them to advance, for them to move on in their career in terms of you're now managing projects and programs, or maybe you have a team of BAs and you're trying to influence the company in that respect. So I think it's to your point, it's a skill that people tend to overlook. A lot of times you'll see that BA QA type of hybrid role where somebody's gathering requirements or doing like user story development up front and then responsible for testing on the back end, which is great. I think you get a good breadth of knowledge from that perspective, but it's a key role in the life cycle of a delivery of many, many projects.
Outstanding. I appreciate that perspective. I may even go further and predict that this might be the most formidable role in the future of utilities, as we find and utilities struggle to hire, let's say, the digital data talent from schools, because I just looked at the U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics, and when you look at the median income of a computer scientist, you try to bring the price tag to your HR department, and they say, well,
Right.
there is no way
Right.
that we are going to afford even the median, especially for an entry-level position. And so as I reflect on that, and I think that there is a lot of great technical talent that can support the computer science aspect, I do find that there is an element on leadership, the people connection, as you say, the rationale. How do you justify the technology to the business process? The business analyst, I think, is at the intersection of a lot of potential to be untapped.
Yeah, I agree. And not only that, I believe that, to your point about the connection with people, that role in particular has to be on site. That's not something that we can easily offshore or nearshore for a cheaper rate. Like, you have to be able to develop those relationships, and the easiest and most effective way to do that, and in many cases the only way you can do that, is in person, talking to somebody, hands-on, walking in people's boots. How are they operating? How can we improve the process?
Awesome. That's an area that we're very passionate about, is bringing all of that talent, giving them the skills so that they can articulate and make the connections between technology, IT, and the business so that they can be more effective. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. As we then go into the topic of role models, let me maybe put a little context to why I think this is an important question. Many folks from our audience, maybe they have two options. They're either on the more seasoned side of the spectrum, where they could be the mentors, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the younger generation who may be looking out for mentors. And as you articulate why you have the mentors that you have had, why would you call them even mentors? What have they told you? Then it helps crystallize the kind of impact that a mentor would want to make in a new member of the team, but also those who are wanting to identify who is a leader that I can come close to kind of take it to the next step. So help us see through examples, perhaps, what are the role models that you have had?
Yeah, when I look back at the role models that I've had in my career, I really gravitate towards those who have trust in me. I think trust is really important, not from a leadership perspective, and I think part of trust is trust that at one point in time I'm going to fail and be okay with that. So when I look at those people that have really helped me out, it's those people that have kind of given me enough rope to hang myself, but have been there with a lifeline as well. That's how I tend to learn the best is, again, like I said, I'm jumping in the deep end of the pool. Don't let me drown, but give me as close to drowning as I can, kind of thing. Because that's the way that I learn. Like I need to immerse myself into so much in terms of experience and knowledge, and just let me figure it out. And those leaders that have let me just kind of gone off and figure it out by myself, and let me kind of, when I'm ready to need help or need explanation, be there for me. And that's kind of how I lead. As a result of that, I believe, like again, in the trust, and I believe as a leader, my number one priority is to give my teams what they need to be successful and then get out of their way. And I look back at some of the early managers that I've had and those that have given me that level of trust and opportunity to learn and explore and do in that manner, has stuck with me to this day. But when you sent me the question, as a little prep, I was really thinking about this, and I was thinking about some of the managers that I had early in my career and how they've influenced me. And one of them in particular, he probably doesn't even know he had this relationship with me and influenced me in this way, was a manager who was new to a company that I was at, who didn't understand the business fully, didn't really understand the role that I was playing, and was around a lot. And those types of things, where how I described how I feel like I thrive, and that kind of managerial relationship didn't always mesh. But it wasn't until like 6-8 months later that I formed a personal relationship with him, that I understood why he was doing that and could appreciate him a little bit more in that respect. So, but there for a while, it was tense, right? So it was tense from my perspective, it was tense from his perspective, but you have to be able to form that trust and form that relationship to really kind of have that good leadership or mentee-mentor relationship to be successful, I believe.
So to make sure that I understood that last example there, when this new manager was around a lot, you were kind of perceiving that he was either micromanaging or kind of looking over your shoulder.
Correct.
Maybe a bit more than you wish, because
Right.
and you perceive that as something lacking trust.
Lacking trust. That's right. Yes. My perception of lacking trust. I didn't have the maturity about me to know that maybe he's coming at it a different way, but he also didn't communicate his reason why. That could have staved off some of the mistrust there, or some of the miscommunication that we had early on. So it's those types of things that I've tried to pick up along the way, that when I see those signals, give the why. This is what I'm after. Here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I'm trusting you. Here's the rope that I'm giving you. You let me know if this is too much or not enough. That's kind of how I've decided chosen to lead my teams as a result of that.
If we, I'm taking a little detour here on this lesson that you learn. We're diving into role models, but I think that there is some juice here I would like to get. Yeah, okay. I don't think that we have got it all yet.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask it is because culture and the people element in an organization is at the very core of a successful data analytics organization, and one that is not. And it's true of any operation, right? But I would say that I think maybe we put too much emphasis sometimes on the technology and the use cases, and not enough on the people dynamics. And you're talking about a people dynamic element here, which is huge. It's huge because sometimes, you hear comments like, okay, if you have a rotten potato, you just get rid of the rotten potato. But, it's not that simple.
No.
We're dealing with, and you had a good manager, and you were a good employee. But there was an element that was missing for a few months there. And so I'm trying to understand, how did the resolution come about? What are the pointers, so that, if you had the tools that you now have back then, maybe you could have done things 1 week into you feeling like somebody was not trusting you.
Right.
So,
Correct.
so what would you have done now that you know better?
Yeah, what I would have done differently back if it were me now, when I immediately started seeing some of that behavior, some of the tension, I would have stopped and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, do you not trust me? How can we work better?" Like immediately, I would have never let it have gotten as long and as far as it did, because those relationships to me are super important. They weren't necessarily back then because I was, young, know-it-all, hotshot software developer who just wanted to like, hey, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Let me go do what I needed to do, kind of a thing. I didn't have his perspective of trying to manage a team that he didn't understand in a new role, in a new company. I didn't have that level of understanding or perspective that I would now. And I think he would now too, because he was a young manager at the time, right? Plenty of skill to do his job, but I don't think there was just that misconnection point. I think just stopping, taking a time out and saying, hey, what's going wrong here? So a colleague of mine and I we have a saying, like I already said, we're from Texas. We're Texan people. Her and I, her name is Christina. And when we're interacting with people in the business today that don't quite have those connections with technology or data or what we're trying to accomplish in the IT world, we call them chicken fried steak conversations. And that sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's like, hey, I work with a bunch of utility people who love to eat chicken fried steak. Take them out for chicken fried steak. Have a meal.
Yeah.
Talk about these things. Forming that interpersonal relationship is really important. And I think, we've always heard the phrase, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So throw out a little honey out there. Don't be afraid to be that person that throws that first email out there, say, hey, let's get together and talk about this kind of stuff. Because I think magic can happen when you start forming those interpersonal relationships. But taking that first step is normally the hardest to take.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think you mentioned, that courage that you're describing too is something that resonates with me a lot, because, sometimes you see the elephant in the room. Sometimes you see what's going on, and you feel it. I mean, there is a disconnect.
Yeah.
It's there. You may not know, what are all of the ramifications or why that is missing, but at least it's missing. There is a connection that is missing, and it takes courage to put it on the table.
Yeah. Especially
when you don't know, why it's happening. So courage, yes, but also the conscientiousness, that what you are sensing is not just, we don't go to school to learn this sort of thing.
No.
You learn this, I think, unfortunately, the hard way.
Yeah.
Right? But if it is not connecting well with your conscientiousness, and you have an inner voice that is telling you something, and then you're acting in a different way, and the inner and the outer are not in alignment, well, there is plenty of room there to reconcile yourself, so that you can be high conscientious and be bold. That actually is, by definition, what a leader is, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing the example, because I think that many, may or will likely, find themselves in this situation. And would you advise to always, are there exceptions to this rule?
I think there's always exceptions to every rule, but I think you triggered something when you're like, hey, if you believe there's something not quite right,
yeah,
it's just going to linger. It's just going to fester. If at least you have to at least acknowledge it.
Yes.
And just be bold to take that first step and like at least try to resolve it, because on the other side, they may not either they're probably going to feel it too. I mean, I have it hard to believe that if you're feeling it, the other person isn't feeling it as well.
Yeah.
But to be able to like be the brave person to take the first step to say, hey, we may be off track here a little bit. Is there something we can do to resolve this? I think is a leadership trait to do, even if you're not seeing it from from the other side of the fence, right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It reminds me, I read a book by a former FBI investigator who said, one of the most magic words that I have used when negotiating, some hostage, situation, when you don't know for sure, but it's what you perceive, use the words "it seems" or "it appears like." You're not judging them, when you use those words, and they're not going to be as defensive, because, it's the appearance of X or Y, and then you're using that as a tool to present the topic, and then you use that as a tool to inquire, am I off in what it seems to me? What am I getting these vibes?
Right.
And it just triggers the conversation.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Let's dive into, this thing which I call the great things before we dive into the greater things. And the great things, if you can provide some examples of success stories, case studies, or challenges, or maybe adoptions of new capabilities into the team and the organization, or new ventures to develop new capabilities. Share some of those success stories. Those are those that you said, we're going to go do X and Y. You did X and Y, and things were either as expected or maybe even better than expected. So tell us about some of those.
Yeah, there's been a few recently, and there's lots happening, especially related to machine learning, AI, however you want to define it. But I keep going back to one particular use case that my team developed about 5 years ago, and it started out with a goal in mind, and that goal was surpassed pretty early on, and then it's just exploded. So lots of us have had the concept of a 360 application, those types of portal type of things that are combining disparate data sources together with a single pane of glass kind of a view. Go all the way back to our business analysis conversation we had a little while ago. I had really good BAs on this project who developed relationships with the stakeholders, and this particular project for us has moved into a mission-critical customer service application, and it never had the intention of being that way. Like, it went from let's combine a bunch of data sources together and give people a view of our customers, and it turned into, now it's our call-taking app, it's working with our area managers, it's the first place that people go to look at all data related to a premise. It has workflow built into it, and it never had the intention of becoming that thing. Like, we never had that as our vision, but due to the talent we had, the relationships we had formed along the way, the fact that there was a team that had been struggling with some out-of-the-box solutions to be able to accomplish some of their goals, to connect with a development team who could translate their needs and wants into actual, tangible, workable products that they enjoyed working on, was magic. And it continues to be magic to this day. It's won like awards at Oncor and all that type of stuff. But I think when I look back at it, I'm really most proud of the process that we went through to get there. The fact that we never really intended it to be there. Funny, I know we're gonna watch a video from Joel in a little while, but when I pitched this project to him, he was kind of a skeptic. He's like, "Do we need this?" And I'm like, "Trust me, let's just build it and see what happens." Now you ask him, it's probably one of the projects that he'll mention in passing of the magic that can happen when you put an AI or analytics team with data, with the functional users and our customer base together to really add value to the organization, as well as improving the lives of our customers. It absolutely has accomplished those goals. So that's just one example.
What would be the name of these particular solution?
Yeah, we call it our Customer 360 application, but back 5 years ago when that was all the rage of people naming things, it's turned into a lot more than that. It's again, it's got that workflow, it's outage management, it's any. I'll put it to you this way: we're an Oracle customer. I think that's well known. Our customer service reps who are in Waco and El Paso used to spend between 8 and 10 weeks learning CCB before they would take their first call. They don't even learn CC&B anymore. They learn our Customer 360 app, and that period of time from 8 to 10 weeks between taking their first call is now down to like 10 days. Mm-hmm. Because the application is easy, the workflows are built in, there's scripting involved for walking the customer through what they're experiencing. So our new customer service reps can really focus in on learning the business and learning the interaction that they need to have with our customers, and not just another system that they're having to work through. So that's a good tangible win when you can get somebody up and running from knock it down from 8 weeks to 2 weeks.
Wow, yeah.
That's a tangible result, right?
Oh, most definitely. Times the number of people that are going
Times the
through
number of
these.
people, there's turnover in that area.
Yeah.
It's a better experience for them as a resource to use an application that helps them in their job versus one that they're kind of struggling with, that they just have to work through. There's a lot of value there.
Let us maybe consider these success story for just a moment. So when you say it has the data, it has a particular, actually it has multiple particular, solutions or services that it offers to different people. You mentioned customer service representatives. That's one of them. Who is another user?
Yeah, so those customer service representatives are like frontline, taking calls, outage calls, new construction, that type of stuff.
Okay.
We also have people in various capacities looking at it from a revenue management perspective. It's got billing information in it. It's got historical usage data, that type of stuff. We've got what we call area managers at Oncor who are responsible for a piece of the service territory from a governmental, large commercial, industrial perspective, who are looking at it for particular areas of the town that they're looking into.
Yeah,
Maybe they've got a city council member that they're having questions raised from. It's got a pretty wide base of users who are using it for various different functions. It was never really intended of being a one-stop shop for everything on the customer, but it ended up becoming that at the end of the day. Whether you got a question from somebody in energy efficiency who wants to look at a customer from a billing and usage perspective, this is the application that they immediately go to because it's really easy, as opposed to having to pull data from this source and this source or go to this system to get it. So lots of use for various reasons. And the interesting part is sometimes I'll look at the user logs and I'll be like, why is somebody from distribution planning using this or something like that? And then they'll come back and say, oh, I love the map. I'm like, okay, well, great. Yeah, I'm looking at this customer and it shows me on the map, it shows me all the distribution circuits. It shows me a particular premise. I can click on the premise and see some details about it and then look at it in context with all of their neighbors. It's real easy to use. I'm like, fantastic. Glad you found a use for it. Never intended it to do that.
And it was not the intention to make this tool something that the user would further develop other solutions. It was intended for, let's say, a core team of developers to provide a solution to the end user. Would that be a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement, but it's kind of morphed itself into, like I said, it's mission critical at this point in time. So people will come up with ideas saying, hey, you've added this piece of data from this system. Can you add this? And I'm like, well, probably we can. If we have access to the data or via an API, sure, we can integrate it. As long as it is within the parameters that we've set, it's not a end-all, be-all solution for looking at customers holistically, but it's built for looking at a particular customer.
Yeah.
So as long as it kind of meets those parameters, yeah, we explore it and we go down the path of trying to include data in it. I
love it. I always admire this about Oncor, and that is the intensity that you guys put behind the things that you believe and want to create and develop. Sometimes at the taking some significant risk, because some other utilities might say, well, we would never kind of develop an application or a solution, especially a mission critical solution, because that means that we're going to have people 24/7 supporting the solution, going forward. And that's kind of like an IT software kind of thing. We're not software developers here in the utility. And I am trying to kind of understand, or at least get as many nuggets as we can extract from, Oncor's journey, even though I realize that not every, this may not be for every utility out there, but it might be for more utilities than we realize.
Yeah.
And so what about your journey you think is different, or how can we say that your journey is different? What are the key ingredients that you think are or have been present in Oncor for this to happen, where you're taking, let's say, some of the responsibilities that traditionally a vendor would provide from a software support and a software development perspective?
Yeah, that's, again, another, I keep saying this, really good question. We when we had a reorg in our IT organization, we we integrated what we call a DevOps model, which isn't like true kind of DevOps, but it was really you develop it, you own it, you run it. Whether you are implementing it or you're building it or you're buying it, it's a team's responsibility to build it, run it, and operate it. And you're correct. Like, we are not a software development shop. We're not selling software, but there's lots of software being developed, even if it's something as small as a portal, which has a pretty basic tech stack. It does have a reliance on support from vendors, from a 24/7 operation perspective. But we also believe that there was enough value that it was worth the cost. And there's lots of applications where we've seen that to be the case. Now, not everything is a tier 1 application. There's some things that if it goes bump in the night or something happens on a release weekend where the upgrade didn't work right and it's broken, we got to fix it on Monday, not a big deal, right? As long as the business understands those parameters. But there are some mission critical applications that we have either built, and there may not be something that we've started from a blank slate in Microsoft Code and just started writing, right? It may be something that we've implemented that's absolutely as critical, that's implemented for Oncor in our requirements that we need to build and maintain moving forward. So I think that we've kind of realized over the years that there's enough gaps in the market, or, I mean, every company thinks they're special. Maybe we think the way that we operate is special and that there's not a solution that's available off the shelf that we really need. So we're going to try to fill those gaps. And if part of that gaps is we're going to go develop or implement something ourselves, then that's what we do.
Gotcha.
Call it innovation. Innovation is at our core. It's in our mission statement. It's a core value. And I don't believe that those hurdles that you mentioned in terms of staffing and support and making sure that you've got a maintenance strategy involved should be a hurdle to getting those accomplished. So the application I just mentioned, it was really written by about 2 or 3 people, which isn't that big of a cost. I don't have a team of 20 on staff that's burning millions and millions of dollars a year. You can start slow. You can develop. I'm a big agile proponent as well, and I think a lot of companies who are trying to dip their toes into like, hey, how can I get started with the kind of stuff? Start with an MVP. Iterate on it. Find out what works and what doesn't. Start getting a feedback. Once you get that interface with your functional people, your stakeholders, or your users who are really engaged to keep adding value, you can just roll it out as slow as you want. And then you'll start seeing that value, and then it's an easier proposition to go and say, hey, listen, senior leader, it looks like we have an ability to really move the needle. Can you give me a little bit more funding? It's really hard for them to say no if you make that case, right? I believe that's out there. But I also think as a utility, it's incumbent upon us that are doing these types of things to be able to show others what's possible. Everybody likes showing off their success, right? I love showing tools that we've built. I love looking at others that others have built and be like, wow, that's really cool. How did you build that? What did it take? How many resources did it take? How much money did you spend on this kind of stuff? That I can go back and start iterating it on myself. Be like, maybe I should put something like that in my backlog because it's worked at an Exelon or a SRP or whatever. So I think from an Oncor's perspective, we want to help be that type of utility because we do have an amount of resource that others don't, right? We are fortunate enough to have the customer base that we do, the capital budget that we do. So we can, from an industry perspective, start pushing the needle a little bit and be more innovative and build and implement things a little bit quicker. One of the examples that our company likes to lean on is we believe we are the first company that integrated AMI, and OMS back in 2012.
Remember,
right?
years ago, you have been talking about this. Yes.
So, and that was a result of some investors saying, hey, listen, if this smart meter can, if it knows when you're out, is it integrating with your OMS system? We were like, I guess that's possible. It hadn't been done. We had to go figure it out. So it takes that innovative mindset where it's like, okay, let's go figure it out. And I think that's a lot of what my team does. And that's coming back to our conversation earlier. It's like, if I have the space and the trust to go figure it out, I'll go figure it out. Yeah. And that's the space that myself and my teams like to really play in.
Outstanding. You did mention in your answer there, you did mention the word capital investments.
Yeah.
Huge topic for most utilities. Whether we must expense the investments and the time that your team puts into creating a solution,
Yeah.
or whether we can capitalize that. And of course, there are some general accounting principles that are used, and this is an accounting conversation for the most part. But are there any particular lessons that you have learned in your journey that might be beneficial for other utilities to know, especially when you're working in an area that is innovative? Not everything, might be productionalized, out of all of your experiments. But what tips you may have, in order for utilities to present the best case forward that maybe can leverage on the capital side?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to fail and fail fast. I think failing fast is really key when you're talking about experimentation and you may be developing something that isn't going to go into production, so therefore it's not a used and useful asset that you may need to push in the expense area of the accounting ledger there. That would be my number one tip would be, hey, if it looks like it's not going to work, pull that ripcord, try something else, or pull it all together. You definitely don't want to go, and we've done this as well at Oncor, where it's like, hey, we spent a lot of effort developing something, a capital asset, with every intention of it going into production, and it wasn't adopted for whatever reason. We didn't do enough homework up front for success from an adoption standpoint, and really had to back our way out of it. It's unfortunate what happens, but it's going to happen. To me, it's like the cost of business. You run that risk. You can't have all the rewards of being an innovative company without the possibility of something just not working. And if you're okay with that and understand it's going to happen, great.
Yeah.
But if your expectation is every capital project that we start is going to be a used and useful asset for 5, 8, 10, 15 years, that's just not reality. Just have that in the back of your mind when you start on this endeavor.
I may be putting you too much on the spot here, with the following question. Would you say that 1 out of 10 experiments go to production, 1 out of 20,
No,
5 out of 10, what is that?
I think we're 9 out of 10. I think that we've developed in a way that just our methodology, we're developing used and useful assets along the way. So let's take a portal, for example, like Customer 360 or something portal-wise, right? I've developed some database tables, I've developed APIs, I've developed a UI stack on top of it. There may be in that process, even if I'm not getting total use out of the end product, I'm still getting use out of the APIs that maybe not work useful in this portal, but it's used by a mobile application, or it's used in the integration between two applications, that type of stuff. So I'm not an accountant. I don't want to skirt the rules by any stretch, but I think we have had the track record that it's probably 9 out of 10, to be honest with you, where we start down a path where we did the homework up front. We've got buy-in from our functional folks, from our user base, who believe in it, who think that it's going to be something they're going to use, so it's worth the investment. And then it's just a matter of execution, right? If at that point in time we've got all our ducks in a row, we think it's got a good value proposition on it, we understand our user stories, we know what our implementation path looks like from MVP all the way to whenever it ends, if it ends, and our users are using it, then it's an asset. Then we're comfortable putting that on the book saying, this is a used and usable asset that we as Oncor have developed for this purpose. Boom, stick that in the rate case.
Gosh, what a golden nugget right there, Josh. Thank you for sharing that component. I do believe that is a very important one. Folks that are in the audience, maybe at different points in their journey, I'm indicating right now, this is one of the lessons that are not, you don't have these sort of lessons unless you try multiple times. You guys have tried, experimented a lot of times, and you have found a way to make your digital assets valuable for more than one particular use. And that what that is telling me is about how strategic you are when you're planning a particular solution, that it may have multiple exit strategies, actually.
Yeah, right, right.
And that's a phenomenal thing in business, just in any business, right? That's a good way to diversify. We talk about diversification all the time from an energy portfolio perspective. Well, that's why I mean by a golden nugget, a way to diversify your digital investments. so that you can increase the likelihood of success of the investments that you're making. Phenomenal. Now, let's dive into the greater things. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we have talked about the good. Let's dive a little bit into the bad and the ugly. What are some of those lessons that, maybe it doesn't matter what size of utility, is being represented by the audience, but they might relate with the stories here.
Yeah, we can talk about some lessons. There's plenty along the way. I like to tell people that I learn all my lessons the hard way. It's just part of who I am, right? If you're going to be ready to jump in the deep end and drown, sometimes you're really going to drown. But there's been some opportunities where we didn't have correct alignment with our stakeholders. Like there was assumptions made either by our functional folks or from a technology standpoint that just wasn't correct. There was misalignment from the beginning, or we didn't have a full understanding of what we were embarking on. That there was the possibility of failure there that came to fruition. There's also, I believe, many cases that I can think back over the last few years where we put the cart before the horse, where we've made decisions that were out of order. Let's talk about data governance, one of our favorite topics, for instance. We have implemented a data loss prevention program at Oncor over the last couple of years, and the first thing we did was buy a tool. That's probably not the first thing you should do is go buy a tool. You should probably generate a data classification strategy first and try to identify what are the things that we really care about from a data loss perspective that we should do the homework up front before you buy the tool and start the clock ticking on a renewal. Though that's a lesson that we had to learn the hard way. It's a hard pill to swallow when you look down and you're like, wow, we didn't get as much done on this implementation in this year as we should have or we could have. So having we call it slow down to speed up. Sometimes we need to slow down in order to speed up, and that's really hard for some of our functional folks who are expecting us to deliver. There's a little bit of frustration from their standpoint of the technology organization is big. It may be a little bit bureaucratic. They want to have a bunch of meetings. They want to discuss things. But yet they say they're agile, but we're like, no, we're really trying to make sure that we have a full understanding about what it is we're embarking on and what are our measures of success. When we get down to, we're done with delivery, how are we going to check the checkbox to say, yes, this was a successful project, we met expectations, here's our path forward on implementation, or where did we miss the mark? So that's one of those things that, again, we continue to learn. Maybe we have the best intentions in mind, but maybe we just haven't connected quite a few dots along the way. And it continues to come back and we're like, man, if we just had one more conversation or we reached out to one more user group, maybe we would have done things a little bit different, especially when it comes to like solution selection, build versus buy versus buy a SaaS solution off the shelf. If you don't have the correct players involved, who have the right viewpoint from a builder, implementer, user, maintainer perspective, you may come to regret that decision. So that's one of the things that I've learned along the way. It's like, wow, I get really excited about something. It's like, I'm going to go build this, it's going to go do this. Well, let me take a step back real quick. Even though I'm super excited about it, am I making the right decision? That's been a lesson that I've had to continue to relearn.
That is good. That is good. What were those key elements? So because there is diversity of perspective, and I was going to ask you a question. You don't want to jump into creating a solution before you have full understanding. That's one of the first statements, and then I highlighted full understanding. What does full understanding means, right? I mean, you can be paralyzed and not do anything,
right?
Because you're always wanting the full understanding. But then you describe it a little bit more. Can you repeat again? What are those key elements that you would say, okay, we just know enough?
Yeah.
You might not have perfect knowledge, but we know enough. What are those areas?
I think if you'd settle on what that MVP looks like, the objectives you're trying to achieve, detail out what does success look like, and we started asking or writing that down in our charters now. Like, what does success look like for our MVP? What does success look like if we have a vision of release 1 through 8 or whatever the case may be? What functionalities or features, or from an adoption standpoint, what does success look like? Just jotting that down and identifying a champion along the way. To me, it's more, you need more than somebody championing a solution from a technology perspective. You need somebody to walk right alongside of you with enough skin in the game from a stakeholder or functional perspective to be able to make those decisions with you. Because culture-wise, you may find yourself in a situation where somebody may completely disagree with the solution, never adopt it, but didn't bother telling you, but didn't want to hurt your feelings, or it was a decision that's already made, and you think you're going down the right path, and it gets down to the end, and it's like, well, it didn't really work for us. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that 2 years ago, right?
Exactly.
We could have changed it. So but identifying, I think to your question, it's really what does success look like, and being able to articulate that either from a metrics perspective or, just an overall adoption usage feeling from your functional folks is a good way to start. But it's tricky, right? It's like, what's enough, and what is where do you draw the line between we should do this or we shouldn't, or this comes down to the value proposition that we talk about all the time, making sure you've got a good idea about what success looks like.
Okay, and we have mentioned this 3-letter acronym, MVP, and for those that know, is the minimum viable product, which in product development is well known, but not many utilities may be fully familiarized with the concept. It has a full definition and a whole methodology around defining that. At the beginning, we were talking about your new manager situation and how to identify when to be bold and present those things. So if you are the employee, we talked about if you're the employee, how to present those. It seems like whatever, but it appears that now on the product development side, I have experienced these where you have your users or potential stakeholders, and you're presenting to them the solution, and they're maybe excited about one component of it, and they are a little bit passive because they realize that there might be other users also interfacing or using the tool. And so they don't speak up because they say, well, as long as I have this one feature, I may not be in love with these other areas, but there might be other people who wants that. And I find that an interesting topic because they have an opinion about these other areas. They just happen to not speak up. And in larger organizations, this becomes problematic because, there is always, you think, oh, there might be someone who may benefit, and you don't get the crisp, criticism that you aspire. You want the harsh, well, maybe not harsh, but you want the direct feedback, to your point. Sometimes, you discover some of these opinions, 1 year later. How can we accelerate? Do you have any tips as for how can we get some of that feedback in a very clear way? And your team, how do you prepare your team for that sort of feedback? Because, this becomes their baby, and, you don't want your team to be demoralized along the way, but you want this feedback. Right.
I think one of the challenging part, and every organization has the loudest voice in the room who tends to be the only voice you hear. I think you need multiple channels to be able to reach out to those folks, however it is, right? Anonymous polling, the chicken fried steak conversations that we had earlier, making sure, hey, if we get the loudest voice in the room and he's like a director level and he's not actually using the application, but his people are, maybe you take him out of the equation and you go talk to your folks who are actually going to use it. Do it in a tactful way. But I think it's the challenge. Like the modern IT organization who is trying to build and develop these things, it's more than just the technology aspect, to your point, right? It's having those people relationships, forming those connections, making sure that we're delivering a good solution that meets the needs, that meets that success criteria. Did it meet our objectives? What's the definition of success here? Making sure you got it. It's really challenging. I've seen so many cases where people are afraid to speak up, or, hey, I was told to do this, or feel like my opinion doesn't really matter. But it's incumbent upon us who are actually delivering those things to identify when that's happening, and everything we can do to fix it as quick as you can.
Yeah. Phenomenal. Now, diving into the vision of the future, I came across this video from your Senior Vice President and Chief Digital Officer, Joel Austin. We're going to play a little video here from the Energy Thought Summit, which happened actually just a couple of months ago up in Austin. And we're going to watch for a couple of minutes this video. I'm particularly interested in the words, "My dream is ... And he will say what his dream is. I want to hear your reflections after we hear that.
Well, I'd be naive not to just jump on the hype of artificial intelligence and the prospects for technological change. I've been at this a while, so I've seen technologies that were promised to come in and change everything and eliminate everybody's jobs and fundamentally change how work was done. I've seen a lot of that partially succeed. I think if you look at what so far, and we've probably all been to conferences or in conversations about what companies, not just in our sector, but in other sectors, are doing with artificial intelligence, and there is a lot of promise. There's also, at this point, a lot of, I think we're perhaps getting the cart in front of the horse around where it will end up. I don't think we really know where it will end up, but technology tends to drive change in every aspect of how we deliver service to our customers. So what can we do with artificial intelligence? Well, the same prospect of what we could do with robotic process automation and becoming more efficient, what we can do with telecommunications technology and sensors to provide better data to all of the functions of the company that are trying to accomplish their mission that's a part of the supply chain of delivering electricity. And ultimately, what better information can we provide to our customers, whether it's around service restoration, service orders, work orders, new construction. The promise of AI to help us do a better job in that space is certainly there right now. I personally consider it to be a promise. It's not a reality. Generative AI is, everybody's looking at it. Everybody's trying to figure out, how we're going to exploit that. I've heard a lot of use cases at different conventions and conversations I've been a part of, where it is freeing up some element of people's time, specific roles to do higher order work, which is a good thing. But ultimately, for me anyway, at least in my lens, it's hard to see it replacing the workforce, hard to see it. I think it just changes what we do as a workforce and perhaps helps us with some of that work now which may become fully automated and handled. My dream is that the Oncor executive that is responsible for how we interact with our customers is that if we were to have these huge climate events like Stuart was describing, which impact hundreds of thousands of those, that we can handle all of those interactions at scale, just like we would if there was only 10 of them. That's really, I think, the promise that I'm looking for out of this new technology is being able to provide every customer an experience that was like they were talking to one of us, whether they're on our digital platforms, whether they're actually interacting with something in a contact center. The highest CSAT scores we get are if somebody is talking to one of our people. But right behind that is if they are interacting with us digitally and we are providing them the right information. So both of those, I think, have promise, and technology is going to help in that space immensely.
So, reflections.
Yeah, I mean, lots there. He was talking about his dream of scalability, and I think that's a pure technology challenge, and it's one as an industry we haven't quite gotten to. It seems like when we start building for the next big storm, a bigger storm will come along. We had a storm roll through North Texas a few months ago that knocked 652,000 of our customers out, which is a big storm. Our standard garden variety storm is 100, 150, 200,000 out. Anything over that, it causes a lot of people to get it into motion from our system emergency center response programs, that type of stuff. But Joel mentioned a couple of interesting things there related to customer communication. I think that this is kind of where my dream kind of falls into a line with what he's talking about, and that is giving our customers the experience that they want and they desire. One of the things that I keep reminding my teams about is reminding them of who our customers are. Mm-hmm. Our customers are my friends, my family, the Whataburger down the street that I take my son to every Saturday. It's Malia's gym that our kids go to. If we start treating our customers of who they really are, I think we venture into communicating with them the way that they want and need to be communicated. And from a outage perspective, like this is, nobody ever comes to Oncor and pats us on the back and says, thanks for keeping my power on all day. Let's be honest, right? That's not the expectation. We have the honor of providing a critical service to our customers. And when they're really in need, we need to communicate them appropriately. And I think that we, as an industry, are getting there. Our regulators are pushing there. It's the right thing to do. So my dream would be, how can we accelerate that? And I think that things like artificial intelligence, whether it's Gen AI or other, however you want to define AI, there's all kinds of automation opportunities for us to get there quicker. That's my dream, is to be able to do the things that we know we need to do better and more efficiently and get there quicker. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think, your desire to accelerate these sort of future, will pay off, and it will come because, you're putting your mind and your team's mind behind that focus. And now I think that a lot of people, including myself, look up to Oncor, because of the leadership, and how forward-leaning you guys are. And a lot of times we hear, the utilities take a lot of heat for so many things. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that they're very slow, right, for very legitimate reasons. We don't want, utilities to be so creative that along the way they're messing up with people's lives, because as a critical service, you don't want to do that. And so a lot of complaints we'll hear from utility folks saying, oh, we're so slow. We know that technology is there, but we're so slow. And so whatever you say, Oncor, who is leading the way, will give us an illustration of among the fastest, let's say, from across the industry. That future that Joel is talking about, is that future 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
I think we're there in many respects, and he may not want to kind of admit it. Like we are using AI today. I gave a presentation to Oncor senior leadership before we started doing like investor talks not too long ago. Their little roadshow activities about, there's lots of talk about Gen AI, and that's all the buzz, and people tend to equate like Gen AI is just AI. And I'm like, right, here's what AI is to Oncor. We've been predicting transformer failures for years and years. We've had a natural language processing routine that when people text us, that when they're getting a proactive communication, we say, don't respond to this. Well, our customers are our customers, and they'll respond to us via text, even though we say we're not reading it, but we're obligated to look at it for things like unsafe conditions, fires, down wires, that type of thing, that we're using AI to comb through all of these responses to be able to prioritize our response for those. So we are using these technologies. It may not be just a shiny thing that's moving the needle, but there's lots and lots of base hits that we're making along the way that's really improving our customer experience. But it takes that investment, it takes the time, it takes the exploration, the failing every once in a while, learning from those failures, and being pretty relentless in the pursuit. Like I've been very, very relentless in the pursuit of solving nested outages. And I don't know if your audience really knows what a nested outage is.
Please tell us.
But imagine, if you will, a scenario where there's lots of damage in a neighborhood, and the OMS system, the outage management system, will do what we call roll up an outage to where we believe the outage exists. So if you get a couple of transformers out in close sequence, we believe that's a fuse. Or if you get enough fuses, we think that that's at a switch or whatever the case may be. There may be a case where we've got an outage on a circuit and a tree falls over somebody's service line after the initial damage. Well, when we go restore customers, we may restore at the fuse or wherever we think the damage is at that protection device, but somebody's left off. And if they didn't call in or they didn't notify us of some case, we've already rolled a truck beyond their neighborhood. We may have, unfortunately, lost sight of them a little bit. Now, we're going to eventually find them from data or they're going to call back, but it's a terrible customer experience. But I believe that we have enough data now and the lack of data to be able to sort through to help identify these scenarios. And we made really good strides in it. The balancing act there is at what point are you comfortable enough in your data that you're ready to roll a truck, which is at an expense, which is at a cost. Like we got to have that level of confidence. We've done it enough to where we're getting better and better. But unfortunately, especially when we're talking about the realm of meter data, it's finicky. Right? We're not talking about pure digital data with precision, exact precision.
Yeah.
We're talking about RF data that somebody parks a van in front of a meter that's in the middle of a mesh network. It may be 5, 6, 8 hours delayed. That doesn't mean that the customer's off. We just haven't gotten data back. So it's hard to take action on those types of things. But from my perspective, I'm pretty relentless with it because these are customers that care. Yeah. They need us to go get them restored. We need to know about them. So whatever we can do from an outage restoration perspective, from a technology perspective, changing our process to identify them quicker is what we should do because it's the right thing. Now, I believe that this is a lesson that lots of utilities are trying to learn themselves and problems they're trying to solve. And this is an area where we can work together as a utility community to help solve it, but it's really difficult to solve. And when you look at it from a macro perspective, you're talking about, all right, you're 650,000 out. Josh, you're talking about 2,000 customers. Well, again, those are 2,000 customers that we need to identify. So it's those types of things that we're really using our data to solve those hard problems. And I think that's where we're going to really move the needle. Not necessarily what Joel was mentioning about people losing their job to AI. And I tend to agree with him in that respect. But we can use our technology to solve those really hard problems, and we're making some strides to do that.
I love that angle. I love it because we're not just looking at the 100 or 200 people. Let's say the vast majority of the customers will be restored and their lives will continue. But you have it as a passion to make sure that we're not leaving folks behind.
Right.
And that is worth applauding.
Yeah,
so great job. The previous speaker had a question for you.
Okay.
And the question is, what is the price of not knowing? And maybe the context, to provide a little more context, let's say, what you can predict and you can define the outcomes, you can put a dollar value to the information that you have, you use it into a model, and that's the known piece. But it is the uncertainty. It is the data quality that you don't know about. It is the outliers, that may be present in the data or they may not be present in the data. How and when maybe, we can attach a price tag to those elements that do play a role in data and analytics, and because if we knew how to put a price tag, then we could actually use that to talk to our executives about it.
Yeah, especially we're talking about the topic of data governance, and this is one of the areas where, at least in my organization, it's too easy to equate governance to security, and there's much more than that. We're talking about things like data quality and data lineage, and going back to people and process of how data becomes data. I think the price of not knowing is pretty high. From a tangible aspect of there are real dollars related to things that we don't know that we have to stop and go figure out, and time that we have to spend to go figure those things out. And from an opportunity cost perspective, if we don't know and we got to go do those things to go figure that element out, we aren't able to do things that we could or should be doing. So, I mean, it's a really challenging question. This is one of the, we were talking about a minute ago, it's the data and the presence of data is just important in some of these use cases, and the unknowns that we spend so much time trying to figure out, costs us in terms of time, energy, and effort, for sure. I haven't really thought about it in that way, but it's a good perspective to have of the cost of the unknown.
Outstanding. Thank you for that insight. And I think that the more we dive into how probabilistic based is the world that we live in and not so deterministic, the more that we begin to peek into that piece of the knowledge regarding the impact of that uncertainty. So what question do you have for the next guest?
I think I'm gonna lean on the Joel question.
Okay.
What is your next guest dream related to what's coming up next? Not necessarily. Maybe it's AI. Maybe it's something automation related. Maybe it's customer service or whatever. But what is their dream, as I kind of described it?
Their dream for the utility, or their dream for
their dream for their utility, for the industry in general. Like what dream do they hope that we are aiming towards accomplishing?
Outstanding. Josh, what a great pleasure it has been connecting with you.
It was fun.
I enjoyed it tremendously. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rolando.
Absolutely. For those folks that have been listening, thank you. More details in the description below. And until next time, bye.